A shadow glides across the water. It's not the ripple of a breeze, not the skip of a stone. It's a purposeful, ancient shape, moving just below the surface. The sun, a golden fire sinking low in the Florida sky, casts long, deceptive streaks of light. But the light doesn't touch the thing below. It's a predator, a ghost in the murk. And it's hungry. You can't see the jaws yet, just the slight disturbance of water. The almost silent glide of a creature that has been alive since before your great-great-grandparents were born. A creature of pure instinct, pure hunger. The air is thick, humid. The smell of decay and damp earth hangs heavy, a perfume of the wild, untamed swampland. Somewhere close by, a dog barks, a sharp, happy sound, the last sound of a normal day. It's a sound of trust, of companionship. It's a sound that's about to be shattered. What you are about to witness is not just a story of a hunt. It is a story of a life full of quiet rituals and simple joys that ended in an instant of unimaginable horror. It's a reminder that even in the most serene moments, in the places we feel safest, something terrible can be lurking just beneath the surface. Something monstrous. And when it strikes, it doesn't care about your past, your future, or the love you have for your pets. It only cares about the primal, savage, terrifying present. Something terrible has already happened, or is about to. Sabrina Peckham was a creature of habit, a regular. She had lived in the same quiet neighborhood in Largo, Florida for over a decade. Her life was a tapestry woven with small, predictable threads: morning coffee on the lanai, the daily newspaper, and most importantly, her afternoon walk. She was a woman who found solace in routine, a comfort in the rhythm of the days. She was 41 years old, a mother and a grandmother. Her love for animals was legendary. She didn't just have pets, she had family members. Her dogs were her constant companions, her shadows. She would walk them every single day, no matter the weather. Her route was always the same: down the street, around the corner, and along the edge of the L-shaped retention pond that bordered the back of her subdivision. It was a beautiful spot, a slice of nature carved out of suburbia. Kids fished there. Neighbors took their own dogs for a stroll. It was a peaceful place, a part of the landscape that everyone took for granted. Sabrina wasn't a reckless person. She knew the risks. She'd lived in Florida her whole life. She'd seen the alligator's present signs, the warnings from local wildlife authorities. But this was her neighborhood. This was her pond. It felt different. It felt safe. The alligators, the few she'd seen, were small. They were part of the scenery. Like the herons and the turtles, they kept to themselves, or so everyone believed. Her life was simple but full. She spent her days with her family, volunteering at a local animal shelter and tending to her small, vibrant garden. She had a kind face, a ready laugh. To her friends, she was the person you called when you needed a shoulder to cry on, or a hand to help you move a couch. She was the anchor in a chaotic world. But in the wild, an anchor doesn't matter. In the wild, there is only prey and predator. And the predator in this particular pond was no ordinary creature. It was a king. This wasn't some small, timid gator. This was a monster, a creature that had been growing unseen for decades in the depths of that seemingly calm pond. His name, if he had one, might have been Goliath, or Titan. The people who would later study him would simply call him the Largo Gator. He was a bull alligator, an alpha male, and he was massive. He was a good 13 feet long, maybe more. His hide was a mosaic of scutes, a dark, armored plate-like skin that was scuffed and scarred from a lifetime of territorial battles. His eyes were small, cold, and calculating. They held no warmth, no malice, just the quiet, terrifying emptiness of a killing machine. His jaw, a weapon of bone and muscle, was capable of exerting over 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. It could snap a deer's femur like a twig. A human bone would offer no resistance. This gator had been a problem for years. Not a public problem, not on the news, but a quiet, insidious one. Neighbors had reported missing pets, small dogs, cats. They assumed a coyote or a fox had gotten them. They were wrong. The local wildlife commission had received calls. A big gator in the pond, one resident had said. Another had reported seeing it drag a raccoon into the water, but no one had seen it with a human, so the warnings were logged. But the gator was left alone. The logic was simple. Alligators are shy, they avoid humans. They only attack when they feel threatened or when they mistake something for food. But this was a large gator, a male past his prime. He was no longer shy. He was territorial. He was aggressive. He had grown too big for his environment, and his hunting instincts were honed to a razor's edge. He knew the pond like the back of his claw. He knew the comings and goings of the residents. He knew the rhythm of their lives, the predictable patterns of their pets. He was not just living in the pond, he was ruling it. And his kingdom was about to expand. The warnings had been there. A neighbor had called the police a month before, worried about the size of the gator. They'd said they'd send someone out. No one ever came. Another had put up a small hand-painted sign near the water's edge. "Watch out for gators." It was a friendly reminder, a neighborly gesture, but no one took it seriously, not seriously enough. The signs were always there, but people had grown complacent. The beautiful pond had become a trap, and Sabrina, with her gentle dog on a leash, was walking straight into it. The sun was low. It was September 22nd, 2023. The air was still, thick with the last heat of the day. Sabrina had just finished her afternoon walk. She was on her way home, her dog trotting happily beside her, a blur of fur and tail. They were walking along the narrow, grassy bank that bordered the irrigation canal, a shortcut to her house. This part of the path was even closer to the water than the main trail. It was a mistake. The gator was waiting. He had been there for hours, a log of scales and muscle, a dark form in the shadows of the bank. He had watched her on her walk countless times. He knew her routine. Today, she was closer than usual. Today, the opportunity was too good to pass up. There was no scream at first. The attack was swift, silent, and horrifically efficient. The gator didn't just bite, he ambushed. A burst of explosive energy from the water. A massive head broke the surface, a blur of dark scales and gaping jaws. The dog yelped, a high-pitched sound of terror and pain, a single syllable of pure shock. The sound was cut short. The gator had grabbed the dog first, a miscalculation perhaps, or just the easiest target. Sabrina froze. Her mind, in that split second, must have been a whirlwind of disbelief, of pure mind-numbing terror. Her dog, her baby, was in the jaws of a monster. She couldn't have just run. She couldn't have just left. That wasn't who she was. She lunged forward, her instincts overriding all reason. She pulled on the leash, a desperate, futile tug-of-war against 1,000 pounds of raw, primal power. The gator, annoyed and undeterred, released the dog. The small body fell to the ground, limp. His focus shifted. He looked up, his cold, empty eyes locking on the woman who was foolishly, heroically challenging him. The next move was a blur of motion, a terrifying pirouette of violence. The gator lunged again, this time with a roar, a deep guttural sound that seemed to shake the very earth. His jaws, now a bloody, slobbering maw of serrated teeth, clamped down on her body. The sound was sickening. A single, sharp crack, followed by a muffled scream, a strangled cry of pure horror. Then, nothing. Just the sound of rushing water as the gator, with its prey in its jaws, spun. This is the death roll. It's a terrifying ancient technique used to dismember prey, a spinning motion designed to tear flesh and break bones. A dark spiral of carnage and blood. The water, calm just moments before, churned into a maelstrom of red and foam. The body was dragged under. A witness, a man named Jamarcus Bullard, was walking his own dog on the opposite bank. He saw the struggle, the terrifying spin, the last desperate splash. He was frozen, a spectator to a nightmare. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold it. He couldn't process what he was seeing. It was too fast, too unreal. And then, it was over. The water grew still again, the last ripples faded. Jamarcus could see the tail of the massive gator disappear into the darkness, a final, chilling punctuation mark on the end of a life. The world went silent again. The birds chirped, the sun continued to set, and Shizuka Matsuda was gone. The 911 call came in at 1:50 p.m. Jamarcus Bullard, his voice a frantic jumble of words, reported seeing a massive gator with a body in its mouth. The dispatcher tried to calm him, but the man was nearly hysterical. "It's a monster, I swear to God. It's got a person. It's got a body," he screamed into the phone. The call was a mix of gasps and terrified affirmations of "I saw it with my own eyes" and "I'm not crazy, I swear." Police arrived within minutes. The scene was eerily quiet. There were no sirens, no flashing lights, just the police cars parked along the curb, their occupants staring at the placid water. But the placid water held a secret. A dark shape was visible just below the surface, a long, telltale form. It was the gator, and a few feet away, something else, something they couldn't quite make out. The first responders, a mix of Largo police and Pinellas County Sheriff's deputies, set up a perimeter. They couldn't just rush in. This wasn't a fire or a car accident. This was a wild animal encounter, a predatory attack. They called in the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC. FWC officers are the experts, the ones trained to deal with these situations. They arrived with a gator trap, a large metal cage with a baited hook. They also brought a sense of grim professionalism. They had seen this before. Never this close to a residential neighborhood, but they had seen the aftermath. The FWC team set the trap and waited. The gator, unconcerned by the human activity on the banks, stayed in the middle of the pond, a dark, motionless silhouette. It was a waiting game, a game of pure, unadulterated tension. Hours passed, the sun set completely. Floodlights were brought in, illuminating the scene in a harsh, artificial glow. The gator, now a distinct form in the light, showed no signs of moving. Finally, a decision was made. They couldn't wait all night, not with what was in the water. An FWC trapper, a veteran named John, decided to go in. He launched a small, flat-bottomed boat, a vessel designed for just such an encounter. He was armed with a long pole with a rope and a snare. The plan was to lasso the gator, secure its jaws, and then pull it to shore. It was a risky, dangerous operation. One wrong move and he could be the next victim. He moved slowly, silently, a ghost on the water. He got within feet of the gator, his heart pounding in his chest. The gator didn't flinch. It was a sign of its sheer confidence, its lack of fear. It knew it was the king of this pond, but it was about to be dethroned. The snare went over the gator's head. The rope was pulled tight. The gator thrashed, its powerful body twisting and turning in a desperate, furious frenzy. The boat rocked violently. John held on, his muscles straining, his teeth gritted. After what felt like an eternity, the gator was subdued. Its jaws were taped shut with thick, industrial-strength electrical tape. It was then pulled to shore, a monumental weight of muscle and armor. On the bank, officers and trappers worked together to hoist the massive creature out of the water. Its weight was staggering. They had to use a winch, and even then it was a struggle. Once it was out, on the grass, a grim silence fell over the assembled group. They could all see the evidence, the blood on its snout, the shredded pieces of clothing tangled in its jaws. The truth was undeniable. The gator was euthanized on the spot. It was the only humane and safe course of action. They couldn't just relocate a creature this aggressive, this fearless of humans. It was a clear and present danger to the entire community. The official report from the FWC would later state that the gator was killed due to its aggressive and predatory behavior towards a human. The next step was the most heartbreaking. A medical examiner was called to the scene. The gator was taken to a secure, private location. What they found inside was a confirmation of the most horrific details of the attack. The remains were positively identified as Sabrina Peckham. Her body was dismembered, a direct result of the gator's death roll. Her ID and other personal belongings were found with her. The autopsy was a gruesome, heartbreaking confirmation of a nightmare. The gator had not just killed her, it had consumed her. The story broke the next morning, a splash of stark, terrifying headlines. Woman's remains found inside alligator. Largo Gator attack. Horrific details emerge. The news spread like wildfire, not just in Florida, but across the country. The story was a morbid fascination, a perfect storm of suburban horror and primal fear. It was a chilling reminder that the wild, even when it's been tamed and surrounded by houses and manicured lawns, is never truly gone. The public reaction was a mix of shock, grief, and a grim, cold fury. The neighborhood was in a state of mourning. Neighbors who had known Sabrina for years were in disbelief. How could this have happened in their community? People who had walked their dogs along that same canal for years now looked at the water with a mix of dread and suspicion. They had been living with a monster in their midst and never knew it. There were protests and demands for action. The FWC was criticized for not acting sooner, for not removing the gator when the first reports came in. The police department was questioned about its response. "What about the signs?" one neighbor yelled at a press conference. "What about the calls we made? Did anyone listen?" The authorities, in their defense, said they had no reason to believe the gator was a threat to humans. "We deal with thousands of nuisance gator calls a year," an FWC spokesperson explained. "Most are not aggressive. They are just trying to get by." But that wasn't a comfort to the family of Sabrina Peckham. The legal fallout was minimal. You can't sue nature. The gator wasn't owned by anyone. The city wasn't responsible for a wild animal on a public waterway. But there was a different kind of justice, a sense of right and wrong that transcended the law. The gator was dead, and Sabrina's family had some measure of closure, however grim. Her funeral was a small, somber affair. Her family requested privacy, a chance to grieve out of the public eye. But the media, in their relentless pursuit of the story, were everywhere. News vans lined the street. Reporters lurked behind trees, hoping to get a picture, a quote, a soundbite. The story had become a spectacle. Sabrina Peckham, a quiet, private woman, had become a public figure in death, a cautionary tale. A small memorial was set up by the canal, a simple wooden cross with a small bouquet of wilting flowers. People came by all day, every day, to leave candles and notes. One note, written in a child's shaky handwriting, read, "I'm sorry for your dog, and for you. You were brave." It was a small act of kindness in the face of so much horror. It was a gesture of solidarity, a community coming together to face a monster, not with weapons, but with grief. The pond, once a place of quiet serenity, is now a place of fear. The water, a murky, impenetrable mirror, holds a memory of a final, terrifying moment. The neighbors still walk there, but they keep a wide berth. Their dogs are on shorter leashes. They glance at the water, a new and different kind of vigilance in their eyes. They know now. They know what lurks beneath the surface. The story of Sabrina Peckham is a haunting one. It's a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the wild. We build our homes, we pave our roads, we create our communities, and we believe we are safe. We believe we are in control. But nature, in its infinite power and its silent, unblinking patience, is always waiting. It doesn't care about our laws or our routines. It doesn't care about our sense of security. The alligator that killed Sabrina Peckham was an old king in a new kingdom. It was a relic of a time before man, a living, breathing testament to a world of brute force and simple hunger. And in the final moments when Sabrina was pulled under, when the water closed over her head for the last time, it wasn't just a life that was lost. It was an illusion, the illusion of safety, the illusion of control, and that more than anything is the most terrifying part of all. The water is still. But it is no longer peaceful. It holds a secret, a dark, churning memory that will never be forgotten. And somewhere, in the depths of that pond, a shadow waits. Because in the wild, the king is dead. But a new one is always rising to take its place.